Hey, how's it going everyone? I'm White Pointer, and in this video I'm going to revisit a time that I'm sure many of you remember, but also one where many of you may not, and that's when Microsoft entered the console market with the original Xbox. As part of their strategy, they needed some developers on board and some recognisable IP. As Bungie were in a bit of financial trouble at the time, Microsoft took the opportunity to snap them up and make Halo their own. But the events that unfolded around that acquisition were arguably way more interesting, so let's go back in the time machine to the turn of the century. Believe it or not, Halo was originally intended to be an exclusive for the Apple Macintosh. Before the Halo franchise was a thing, Bungie, the developers behind the game, were an independent studio, creating games primarily for the Apple Macintosh. They crafted a number of games for the platform, including Myth and Oni, but perhaps their most notable titles were the Marathon Trilogy. These three games, Marathon, Marathon 2, Durandal, and Marathon Infinity, were groundbreaking, with the first game in particular having the honour of being the first game that allowed the player to free look using the mouse. Promoted as the Mac's answer to Doom, it actually looked very similar to Doom at first glance, presented in the same kind of 2.5D or pseudo 3D style, but trumped it in one key area, and that was free look using the mouse. For the first time in a first-person shooter, Marathon gave the player not only the ability to look up and down, but do it using a mouse to get truly accurate precision. It was in fairness still kind of a crude and clunky implementation, and didn't allow you to look completely 90 degrees up or down. It was closer to 45 degrees, but it still did it and is recognised in the Guinness Book of Records for doing so. The first two games were also ported to the short-lived Apple Pippin console. After the success of Marathon, Bungie got to work on a spiritual successor called Halo Combat Evolved. Originally starting life as a strategy game, it evolved into a pretty ambitious, expansive third-person action game that included the ability to enter and exit vehicles. Steve Jobs was so excited about the project that he took to the stage at Macworld 1999 to introduce the game to the world as a Mac exclusive, stating that it was one of the coolest games he'd ever seen.
We are starting to see some great games come back to the Mac, but this is one of the coolest I've ever seen. This game is going to ship early next year from Bungie, and this is the first time anybody has ever seen it. It's the first time they've debuted it. And so I'm very happy to welcome on the stage Jason Jones, who is the co-founder of Bungie and the Halo project lead. Halo is the name of this game, and we're going to see, for the first time, Halo. Welcome, Jason. Thanks, Steve.
He then invited Bungie founder Jason Jones on stage to show footage of the game for the first time, with Jones stating that the footage was being rendered in real time on the Mac using OpenGL. The game was set to become just as much of a technological advancement as Marathon was. Only around a year later though, Microsoft announced that they had acquired Bungie, in a deal apparently worth about $30 million US, and that Halo was now going to be a first-person shooter exclusive to the Xbox. They would interestingly still retain the third-person vehicle sections. When this was made public, Steve Jobs was reportedly furious at Microsoft, and CEO Steve Ballmer in particular, calling them immediately to express his frustration. Even though Bungie before that point had been independent and not owned even partially by Apple, in fact they were actually partially owned by Take-Two, Microsoft had just purchased the leading game developer for the Mac and transformed them into a developer for the Xbox. Ed Fries, Microsoft Vice President of Game Publishing at the time, was told to speak to Jobs and calm him down, agreeing to a deal to port some Windows games to Macintosh.
Yeah, so let me go back a little bit just to give you a little context. The one guy that I knew at Bungie was a guy named Peter Tamte. He was kind of their head of business development. And he's the guy who first called me when basically what was happening in early 2000 is Bungie was running out of money, and the company was at risk of going out of business. They already had an offer from Take-Two. Take-Two already owned a third of the company, and they had an offer from Take-Two to buy the rest of the company, but they wanted to look around and see if anybody else was interested. And so Peter called me, and I said, yeah, I'm interested. I just gotten approval for the Xbox project, and I had a bunch of money to spend, to try to get some games in time for our launch in 2001. So less than 2 years in the future. And I was a big Bungie fan. I had played a bunch of their games. So anyway, Peter Tamty, just remember that name. So fast forward a few months, put the acquisition together. It gets publicly announced. And yeah, I'm sitting in my office one day and I get this email from Steve Ballmer, which is kind of unusual. I don't normally get mails from Ballmer. He was a couple levels above me. I was the head of Microsoft's game business at that time. It was a very short mail. It was just something like, Steve Jobs is mad because you bought some company. Here's his phone number. Call him and calm him down. That was pretty much all it said. Something to that effect. So I was like, oh, okay, great. I got to call Steve Jobs. So I did. So called him up, called the number, and he answered right away. It was Steve Jobs. It didn't go through like 3 levels of secretaries or something. And we talked about it. And basically what I told him was that I had worked at Microsoft a long time. I had worked on Mac Excel. I had worked on Word for the Macintosh. I didn't have anything against Apple or the Mac. Microsoft and Apple had worked together, many times in the past. I had bought Bungie for Xbox, but that I had a bunch of other games, including Halo, that I would be willing to license to somebody to port to the Macintosh. I think it would be great to have a Mac version of Halo. I think it would be great to have Mac versions of Age of Empires and many other of our games. And I told him I knew just the guy to do it, and that guy's a guy named Peter Tamty. And the reason I brought up Peter Tamty was because when we acquired Bungie, we brought in all the game developers. We brought in Jason Jones and his partner, Alex Seropian. But the one guy we didn't have a job for was Peter Tamty, the guy who made the initial call to me. So I felt really bad that Peter was kind of left out in this whole acquisition. And Peter had told me he wanted to start a Mac porting company. So anyway, I mentioned this to Steve. He never really had a chance to get mad at me on the call. I mean, we actually had a pretty friendly call. I told him what my idea was, and he said, "Yeah, that sounds good." And here, I'm gonna assign this to this other guy who works for me, and then that's who I dealt with from then on. I dealt with this other guy, and he put the deal together on their side, and they funded Peter Tamty to start this independent company to do these Macintosh ports.
Halo Combat Evolved would eventually be released on the Mac several months after the Windows port in 2003. Given how Halo Combat Evolved and its sequel Halo 2 sold almost 14 million copies between them and were easily the original Xbox's best-selling games, there's little doubt that this was one of the smartest business decisions Microsoft made during this period. If you want to learn more about the Xbox, I'll throw in a shameless plug for my book here as well. There's heaps of other facts in there surrounding the Xbox, as well as plenty of other consoles, so check it out if you're into this type of history because I cover a lot of this kind of thing. What Xbox game was promoted with a fake website about beekeeping? What pro wrestling celebrity joined Bill Gates on stage to launch the console and endorse it? You'll need to buy the book to find out. Drop me some comments below if you owned an Xbox, or if you remember this time, or even if Halo is your favourite game. I'd love to hear your stories as I do read all of them. Give me a thumbs up if you like this video, it really helps a lot, and don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date with my content. Thanks for watching and see you next time.